Chapter 5 is on the integumentary system, which is basically your skin. The two parts of the skin would be the superficial epidermis and the underlying dermis. Deep to the dermis is the hypodermis, a layer of adipose tissue. The hypodermis, however, is typically not considered to be part of the integumentary system. There are two types of skin, thin skin and thick skin. Thick skin is found on the palms of the hands and the soles of the feet and has 5 distinct layers or strata, whereas thin skin only has 4 layers of strata. This diagrammatic shows not only the various strata, but also the cells contained therein. We're going to start with the bottommost stratum, which is known as the stratum basal or germinativum. Here you will find 3 types of cells: keratinocytes, which are the main cells of the epidermis; melanocytes, the melanin producing cells; and finally tactile or Merkel cells, and these are receptors for touch. Moving up from the stratum basal, you will see a fairly thick stratum spinosum, where the keratinocytes appear spiny because they're stretched by the desmosomes during the process of tissue preparation. Also, you will find within the stratum spinosum the dendritic cells. Dendritic cells are part of our immune system. Next, we have the stratum granulosum. Here, it's only keratinocytes that are found, and these keratinocytes are now filled with keratohyalin granules, which will then transform into the waterproofing keratin. You'll notice that in red would be the stratum lucidum. Stratum lucidum is that 5th stratum that is present in thick skin only. The stratum closest to the surface of the skin, or on the surface, is the stratum corneum. And here we have many layers of keratinocytes. All of them are now dead. You'll notice that keratinocytes are the cells that migrate from the stratum basal to the stratum corneum, where they're ultimately slept. This process takes about 30 to 35 days. Deep to the epidermis, you will find the dermis. Dermis is connective tissue proper, CTP, and it consists of 2 layers. The more superficial papillary layer, which accounts for about 20% of the dermis. This is loose CTP. In thick skin, the papillary layer is even thicker and is responsible for the fingerprints that appear in thick skin. Deep to the papillary layer, you will have the reticular layer. Here, the terminology gets confusing. The reticular layer is not composed of reticular CTP, but of dense irregular CTP, where the collagen bundles are arranged in an irregular fashion. The integumentary system also contains various glands. There are sweat or sudoriferous glands producing sweat, and ultimately the sweat prints or fingerprints that are visible in thick skin. Sweat gland morphology is simple, coiled, tubular. There are also oil or sebaceous glands that produce sebum or oil. These are associated with hair. Morphology is simple alveolar. Recall that alveolar refers to a grape cluster-like shape. And finally, oil glands secrete by the holocrine method, where each cell accumulates sebum and eventually bursts to actually form part of that secretory product, sebum. Earwax or cerumen is produced by ceruminous glands, and of course, those are specific and only found in the ear canal. The skin also has various receptors for sensory incoming information. There are free nerve endings for pain, temperature. There are also receptors for light pressure. These are tactile or Meissner's corpuscles. And the deeper lying receptors are called lamellar or Pacinian corpuscles, and these will pick up the deeper pressure sensations. Right around the hair root would be the root hair plexus that will monitor and perceive not only pain sensations but also movements. Also associated with hair would be smooth muscles known as arrector pili muscles. These muscles contract or react to various stressors, in which case they contract and pull the hair up to form what we normally call goosebumps or goose pimples. Arrector pili are smooth muscles. This last slide shows the various external features that you might find on the skin. First would be the fingerprints or sweat films, and this is due to friction ridges that will ultimately collect sweat, and then that's perceived as these patterns we know as fingerprints. Cleavage lines would be maps of the primary orientation of collagen fibers within the dermis. This helps surgeons determine the best way to make an incision during surgical procedures to minimize scarring. Essentially, you want to go along with the primary cleavage line orientation. Again, these are collagen fibers. Finally, flexure lines are basically produced or encountered because of repetitive bending or flexing of the skin.